hunted in a wildfire. 2 Bigfoot children knocked on her door for help. The wind carried the stench of burning sap and scorched earth. The forest wasn't just burning, it was being hunted by fire. Flames didn't crawl. They chased rolling over the mountains like a living predator. Mara Pike moved against the heat with one arm shielding her face. She was a field biologist, suspended, discredited, erased for making one claim she refused to take back. Bigfoot exists, and they are not what we think. Tonight, in a forest collapsing into fire and ash, she was about to learn truth doesn't just exist. It knocks. From the wall of smoke behind her came a sound. Tock, tock, tock. 3 knocks, precise, rhythmic, intelligent. Mara froze. Not wind, not cracking wood, not an animal. A signal. She followed the sound through the burning trees and stopped dead. There, huddled together in the dirt and ash, were 2 small creatures. Too human to be animals. Too wild to be human. Bigfoot juveniles. Alive. Terrified. One was injured, a steel trap crushing its ankle, bleeding badly. The smaller one clutched something to its chest, a braided ring of cedar boughs crafted with purpose. Not dropped. Offered. The injured one raised its shaking hand and knocked 3 times on the ground. Tock, tock, tock. A plea, not a threat. The fire roared closer, spraying sparks across the dirt. They had minutes before everything around them ignited. Mara stepped forward, but the smaller creature recoiled, shielding its sibling. And in that moment she understood it wasn't the fire they feared. It was her. They had been hunted by humans before. Slowly, Mara dropped her hatchet, then her knife, then her pack. She raised both hands and knelt. She didn't speak their language, but she knew what trust looked like. You don't earn it by force. You offer it first. She unzipped her pack, took out a small honey biscuit, broke it in half, and gently placed it on the ground. Then she backed away. The larger juvenile approached, cautiously sniffed the biscuit, and shared half with the smaller one first, before eating. Mara's heartbeat thudded. Predators don't share. Beings with a heart do. She whispered, "I can get you out of here. But we have to go. Now." The injured creature stared back at her, breathing hard. Then slowly it knocked 3 times again. Tock, tock, tock. Acceptance. Mara lifted the smaller juvenile onto her back. The injured one limped beside her. And together, they ran into the fire. None of them knew it yet, but in that moment, a vow older than fear was awakened. A vow that would lead to the circle of stones, the hunters in the night. The return of a leader hidden by myth and a secret the forest had guarded for 15 years. If you were in Mara's place, would you have trusted them before they trusted you? Let me know in the comments. Now this story begins. Phase 1. The signal of trust. The fire chased them across the ridge like a living predator. Trees fell behind them with shrieks of burning wood, and embers swarmed through the air like hornets of flame. Mara Pike didn't look back. She ran, one arm wrapped around the smaller of the 2 young creatures, clinging to her, the other hand pulling the older one forward as it struggled to limp on a wounded leg. They were shaking, terrified, injured, exhausted, and yet not once did they try to leave her. The smoke thinned for a moment, and ahead, half swallowed by pine, stood an old abandoned cabin, its roof sagging, windows shattered, but walls still standing against the fire. Shelter. Temporary safety, just enough to keep them alive. Mara guided the little one inside and helped the injured juvenile lean against the back wall. They watched her not with wild rage, but with cautious intelligence. They knew fear, but they also knew choice. They were not creatures of instinct alone. They were deciding whether to trust her. Her hands moved slow, deliberate. She dropped her field knife to the floor and slid it aside away from them. Then she emptied her pack in front of them to show there was no trap gauze, water, antiseptic, honey biscuits. No weapons, no threat. The older one growled low, not from aggression but pain, as blood poured from its crushed ankle. The iron teeth of a hunter's trap were still clamped around the flesh. Mara's voice stayed calm. "I'm going to help you," she said, not sure if they understood English, only hoping they heard the honesty inside the words. She worked the trap open and cleaned the wound while it groaned in pain, digging its claws into the wood. When she wrapped the leg, the smaller one reached to hold its sibling close. A protective bond. A family bond. When Mara finished, she set a honey biscuit near them. The little one reached for it, but before it could eat, the older one broke it and shared it between them. Mara froze. That one simple act was louder than any language. Predators didn't share food, but a people did. Outside, the fire raged, but inside that ruined cabin, a fragile connection took root, born not from words, but from something older mercy. Then 3 knocks. Not on the door, not from Mara, from the darkness outside. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The 2 young Bigfoot went rigid, eyes wide. The older one knocked back, not in fear, but as if answering a code. Mara didn't breathe. Something else was out there. Something big. Something waiting. The smaller one looked at her, afraid not of what was outside, but afraid that it had followed them. Mara stood and stepped toward the doorway, but the injured one reached out, not to stop her, but as if warning, "Do not go alone." So she didn't. She stepped outside with them. In the ash-covered earth under the dying light of the fire, she saw the tracks. Not 2, not 5, dozens. Footprints larger than any man she had ever seen, circling the cabin in absolute silence. Watching. Waiting. They were not alone in the forest. They never had been. The little one pressed against her leg, trembling. The sibling's breath rose and fell in panic. Mara finally understood. These 2 weren't lost. They were being hunted. And now their hunters knew exactly where to find them. Phase 2. The first ritual night pressed against the broken cabin like a living weight. Outside, the firestorm had moved on, but smoke still drifted through the trees, floating low like a warning that refused to leave. Mara sat near the 2 young Bigfoot, watching them in the glow of the lantern she'd found in a rusted drawer. The little one stayed close to its older sibling, and though both were exhausted, neither slept. They watched the door. They listened. They remembered fear. Mara forced her breathing steady. Panic wouldn't help them now. The cabin was barely standing, but it was shelter for an hour, maybe a night if they were lucky. She tore a strip from her flannel sleeve and tightened the bandage around the older juvenile's ankle. It winced, but didn't pull away. Progress. "You're going to be okay," Mara whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." She didn't expect a response, but the creature held her gaze for a moment. And in those eyes she didn't see a monster. She saw a child who had been hunted. The memory hit her like a blow. A river, cold water, a small hand slipping from hers, a scream that never made a sound. She blinked it back, the grief, the failure that had followed her like a curse all these years. Not now. Focus now. Something thudded outside. Mara snapped alert. The juveniles froze, eyes wide. Talk, talk, talk. 3 knocks again, but closer this time. Mara stepped forward, placing herself between the creatures and the broken door. She looked at them. "Is it them? Your people?" The older one knocked twice against the floor. "Talk, talk. Not 3, 2. Mara frowned. Not the same rhythm, not the same message. If 3 knocks meant ritual language, trust, then 2 meant something else. Outside, a faint responding knock echoed 2 knocks, back low, stalking. Searching. Not a greeting. Not a bond. A hunt signal. The older juvenile growled a warning deep in its throat. The little one whimpered and crawled behind Mara. Without thinking, she reached back and shielded them both with her arm. "All right," she breathed. "If something out there wants you, they're going to have to get through me first." There was movement outside, fast, deliberate circling. Mara killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed the cabin. The only sound was the rapid breathing of 3 hearts, not ready to die tonight. A shadow moved past the window. Human height, not Bigfoot. Mara's eyes narrowed. Hunters. They had followed these young ones into the fire. And now, into the night. A beam of light slashed through the window crack. Flashlight. They were sweeping the area looking for tracks. Mara gritted her teeth and reached for the only tool within reach, a broken axe handle. Useless as a weapon, but solid enough to break bones. The juveniles tensed. Mara pressed a finger to her lips. Quiet. The footsteps outside slowed. Whoever was out there had stopped right at the door. One breath. Two. Silence. Then creak. The door moved. Mara's grip tightened. If they opened it, she'd strike first. No hesitation. She'd kill to protect these small lives. She knew that now. She had already failed to save one child in her life. She would not fail again. But before the door opened, another sound swept through the forest. Not human. Not fire. Something deep like a drum made of mountains. A low resonant call that vibrated through the ground. Boom! The hunter outside froze. Boom! The second call echoed closer. Then boom, boom, boom. 3 great beats like a war signal from the ancient world. Then came the roar. Not from a lion, not from a bear. From something that claimed these woods. Something not alone. The hunter stumbled back. Shit, move, move, move. Boots crashed through brush as they retreated into the trees, running from a force they didn't understand. And just like that, they were gone. No fire, no flames, no hunters, only silence. Only 3 beings in a cabin breathing again. The little one crawled to the door and placed its tiny palm against the wood. Then it turned back to Mara, and for the first time since this night began, it knocked. Talk, talk, talk. She stared at it. Slowly, she knocked back. Talk, talk, talk. A ritual had begun, not of language, not of species, but of trust. Whatever the forest had awakened tonight, it had bound them together. Not by chance, by choice. And outside, far beyond what they could see, the forest finally moved. 30 shadows stepped between the trees, and the search for what was theirs was far from over. Phase 3, the encounter. The night did not rest. It stalked the cabin with slow, deliberate hunger. Smoke still drifted between the trees, and beneath it the smell of iron, the smell of blood. Not theirs. A warning. Mara didn't sleep. She sat against the wall beside the 2 young Bigfoot keeping watch. The injured one had finally drifted into uneasy rest. The smaller one remained awake, pressing close to her side as if it had already decided whatever she was no longer a stranger. She was a shield. Outside, the wind died. The world held its breath. And then the sound of engines. 2 of them, rolling slow, hunting. Mara's heart turned to stone. She moved to the window like a ghost, careful not to disturb the broken glass. Down the hill, 2 trucks' headlights off, gliding through the smoke as if they knew exactly where to go. Hunters. They weren't lost in the forest. They were tracking something. They were tracking them. Mara turned away from the window and knelt in front of the older juvenile. We have to move. Now. She pointed to the rear of the cabin toward the trees. Out the back. Quiet. The creature understood. It pushed itself up despite the pain and reached for its smaller sibling. The little one clung to Mara's coat, making no sound, but its trembling said everything. Mara gathered her pack. It barely had anything left inside, but there was still one last honey biscuit. She tucked it in her jacket. A beam of light cut through the front window. A hunter's flashlight. We're out of time, Mara whispered. They slipped out the back, silent, through the tall grass into the black spine of the forest. But they hadn't gone 20 steps before snap. A flare ignited behind them, red fire tearing open the dark. There, a voice roared. Don't let him run, gunshots shattered the night. Go, Mara grabbed the little one and pulled the injured juvenile along. They ran between jagged pines over deadfall through smoke. Bullets smashed into tree trunks. Sparks burst. The hunters were coming fast, 2 ahead, 1 flanking from the ridge, 1 behind. A full sweep, professional, coordinated. These weren't random poachers. This was a hunt team. Something whistled past Mara's ear and struck the tree ahead. Not a bullet, a tranquilizer dart. They didn't want these creatures dead. They wanted them alive. A net launcher fired. Mara shoved the juveniles clear, and the net missed by inches. They reached a drop in the hill and slid down, crashing through brush and mud. The injured Bigfoot cried out in pain but kept moving. Behind them, the hunters slid down after them, shouting, "Split wide. Don't lose sight of the big one. Take the woman if you have to, the woman." They were willing to shoot her too. Mara's blood turned to fire. They ran into a ravine, a dead end. She scanned the rock wall, too steep to climb, too exposed to hide. Another flare shot into the air, lighting them up. They were trapped. The hunters were closing in. But then the ground rumbled. From deep in the forest, 3 massive knocks boomed like ancient thunder. Boom, boom, boom. The little one looked to the trees and answered with 3 soft knocks on a rock. Tock, tock, tock. A voice not human answered from the woods. Then another. Then another. A wall of low roars rolled across the mountainside. The hunters froze. Movement flickered at the tree line, massive shapes too tall to be men, too silent to be beasts. The forest was awakening. One hunter panicked. Fall back, fall. Something huge moved between the trees. A dark outline, a giant. Then another stepped beside it, then another. 30 shadows, silent, watching. Mara stared, heart hammering. They had found the children, not beasts, not monsters, parents. But they didn't come closer, didn't attack, didn't speak. They only watched. Because the forest had already decided who would make the next move. And in that moment, Mara Pike realized the real test of trust had not begun in the cabin. It was starting now. Phase 4. Blood of the Hunt. The hunters didn't retreat. Fear flickered in their eyes when they saw the towering silhouettes along the ridge, but fear didn't stop men like them. It only made them meaner, more reckless, more dangerous. "Hold position," the lead hunter barked, leveling his rifle. He wasn't tracking animals. He was tracking money. Mara pulled the 2 young Bigfoot behind a fallen log. Her heart pounded as the hunters regrouped, forming a half circle. They weren't going down the hill, they were locking it down. They were going to capture the little ones and kill anything that stood in their way. One of the hunters fired a shot into the air. "We know you're out there. Come get your kids if you want 'em," he yelled into the forest, taunting the giants, mocking them. A low growl rolled across the land, not from one throat, but from many. Then came the answer. Boom, boom, boom. The tribe called back 3 colossal strikes, shaking the ridge. The ground trembled. But the hunters were ready for war. They dropped iron stakes into the dirt, unspooled chains, and raised portable flash towers burning white beams meant to blind anything that charged. A trap. A manufactured battlefield. "These things aren't human," one snarled. "They're monsters. You don't show mercy to monsters." Mara raised her head, eyes burning. "They're not monsters." Her voice cut through the dark like a blade. "They're children. And they're scared." The lead hunter turned toward her, smirking. "Lady, step aside. You have no idea what you're protecting." He raised a tranquilizer rifle aimed at the injured juvenile. She stepped in front of it. "You'll shoot me first," she said. His finger tightened on the trigger. He believed her. Mara stared back, unblinking, because she was telling the truth. She had already failed to save 1 child in her life. She would not lose another. Not again. The hunter laughed. "Move." "No." His face twisted. "Fine." He fired. At the last instant, another hand moved. A massive shape dropped between them like a thunderbolt, silencing the shot. The dart bounced off thick fur and shattered against stone like muscle. The hunter spun, shouting, stumbling, scrambling. One of the giants had entered the ravine. This one stood larger than the rest, scarred white-tipped fur, eyes burning like coals under snow. He didn't roar. He didn't threaten. He just looked at Mara. Then he knelt. The earth went still. Even the fire in the distance seemed to pause. He placed a massive fist to the ground. Then he opened his hand and pushed the dirt forward. A gesture of peace, of recognition. Mara stared, breath frozen. The injured juvenile made a desperate sound, half sob, half hope, and reached toward the giant. This wasn't just any Bigfoot. This was their protector, their blood, someone who had crossed mountains to find them. The lead hunter panicked. "Take the shot. Take him down. Gunfire exploded. Chaos tore open the ravine. The tribe moved. Not with wild rage, but with purpose, using trees as shield stone, as cover, striking only when needed. It wasn't random violence. It was a rescue. Mara grabbed the little one and shielded it with her body. Beside her, the injured juvenile dragged itself forward just as another bullet ripped into the dirt. She turned and saw the impossible. The giant the protector had stepped between them and the bullets, taking every shot meant for them. He roared, not in anger but pain and defiance, a roar that said one thing unbroken: "You will not take them." Blood stained his fur. He dropped to one knee, but he did not fall. His eyes found Mara's again, and slowly struggling, he raised his hand and struck the ground. Talk, talk, talk. The ritual, the vow, the same pledge the children had made to her. Trust, bound by choice. Her chest crushed with emotion. This wasn't a monster. This was a father. A dart struck his shoulder, then another. His breath faltered. He swayed. No! Mara screamed and launched herself at the hunters with nothing but a broken axe handle and a fury that frightened even her. She swung. Bones cracked. One hunter screamed as he crashed backward. Another aimed at her, but a boulder the size of a car smashed into the ground and sent him flying. The tribe had fully descended. The ravine shook with the power of giants defending their own, and amid the violence Mara felt something change. She was no longer protecting these beings. She was fighting beside them. When the last hunter fell and the smoke cleared, the protector collapsed. Tranquilizers and bullets had done their damage. The two young ones crawled to him, crying silent cries. Mara knelt beside them. Her hands trembled as she touched his massive arm. He shouldn't have trusted her. But he did. And now, he might die for it. She looked at the forest that surrounded them alive, watching, waiting, and she made a choice no human had made in centuries. She struck the ground. Talk, talk, talk. I will not abandon him, she whispered. I swear it. Phase 5. The Vow of the White Tribe. The battle was over, but the night was not done with them. The ravine lay scarred, broken trees, torn earth, abandoned weapons, scattered like bones on a battlefield. The hunters had been driven off, some wounded, some unconscious, some carried away by their own fear. But victory did not feel like triumph. Because the Great One, the protector who had shielded the young at the cost of his own blood, lay dying. His breath came uneven, heavy. His eyelids flickered. The tranquilizers had hit deep, too many, maybe fatal for even a being like him. The two young ones were pressed against him, clinging to his fur, trembling in silent grief. Mara knelt beside them, hands stained with dirt and blood, his, not hers. She had no idea how to save something this massive. Human medicine wasn't built for legends, but she wasn't going to watch another life slip away while she did nothing. Not again. Stay with me, she whispered to him. You hear me? We're not done yet. You don't leave them. Her voice cracked. The little one looked at her eyes full of desperate pleading, and then something changed. The forest stirred. A wind unlike before moved between the trees, not cold, not cruel, but carrying something ancient. A silent call passed over the land, a summons, a gathering. The ground began to vibrate, with footsteps, heavy, measured, many. Branches parted. They came the White Tribe. Dozens, 30 giants stepped into the ravine, one after another, moving with silent power. Their fur carried scars of old wars. Their eyes held the wisdom of a world that existed before memory. Some stood over 10 feet tall, carrying staffs carved from ancient cedar. Others wore braids woven with feathers and riverstone. They were not beasts. They were a people. And this was not a rescue. This was a ceremony. Mara rose slowly. They towered over her but did not strike. They studied her not with hatred but judgment. Weighing her soul, one stepped forward, the same great being who had fought for the young. He was still kneeling, still breathing barely. His fur beneath the blood was not brown or black like the others. It was white, the White Guardian. A female stepped forward, next tall, fierce, her silver-braided fur catching the moonlight. A matriarch. The tribe parted for her. She knelt beside the wounded white guardian and pressed her forehead to his. Then she looked at Mara. Time froze. Her voice rolled like the weight of mountains, deep and resonant. Not speech, not words, but a sound that carried meaning beyond language. She touched the earth. Knock, then again, knock, knock, then once more. Knock. 3. Mara answered. Her hand trembled, but her heart did not. Talk, talk, talk. The matriarch nodded. Then one by one every member of the tribe placed a hand to the earth and struck. Boom, 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 boom. The ground shook, not with violence but unity. It was an oath. The vow of the white tribe. A bond had been accepted. Mara felt her vision blur, not from fear but something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. The matriarch reached into her fur and pulled out something wrapped in deerskin. She set it on the ground in front of Mara. Mara hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a cedar ring woven tightly with strands of river grass and tied with a lock of white fur. A symbol. Not a gift. A welcome. One of the tribe stepped forward carrying something else. A flat piece of stone etched with markings worn by time. He placed it beside the cedar ring. Mara lifted it. Her breath caught in her throat. The symbol carved into the stone, she had seen it before. In her father's old notebook. The notebook no one believed. The notebook that got her career destroyed. It was not madness. It was not fantasy. It was truth. He had found them. And now she had found them too. A shadow moved against her sleeve. The little one took her hand and placed it over the cedar ring. The older one rested its forehead against her arm. They had chosen her. She had chosen them. And in the heart of a forgotten ravine, where the world of man had no power, Mara Pike knelt surrounded by giants and made a vow that would never be spoken, only kept. Whatever hunts you hunts me. Whatever finds you finds me. Where you go, I go. You are not alone anymore. The wind circled the tribe and carried the ritual into the night. 3 knocks rolled across the mountains. Talk, talk, talk. The forest listened and answered back. The same. 3 knocks. Dawn didn't rise that morning, it crawled. Pale light leaked across the mountains like it was afraid to wake what the night had stirred. The fire was gone. The hunters had vanished. But the vow remained. Mara sat on a stone ledge overlooking the valley. The 2 young Bigfoot were huddled beside her, safe for now, while the white guardian slept under the watch of his tribe, healing, breathing, alive. She looked down at her hands, still stained with his blood, and she didn't feel fear. She felt purpose. There were no more doubts now. No more questions about what was myth and what was real. No more pretending she belonged to a world that told her to stay silent. Some truths don't live in books. Some truths live in forests, waiting for someone who still remembers how to listen. The smaller one handed her a flat piece of bark. On it, drawn in charcoal, were 3 symbols. A circle, a hand, and 3 marks. The circle, the tribe. The hand, the vow. The 3 marks, the call. The little one tapped the bark. Then it looked at her. It was teaching her. This wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. Mara closed her eyes. She heard the wind move through the cedars. She heard rivers waking under the ice. She heard something older than language, older than fear. Talk. 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 Somewhere in the forest the call was waiting. She stood, and the 2 young ones stood with her. The mountain valley watched in silence. Because now it knew her. And it would remember her. Mara Pike of the 3 knocks. The human under the white tribe's vow. The keeper of lost things. And the one who answered when the forest called. This is not a story about monsters. This is a story about choosing to protect something before you understand it. Because sometimes, what we save saves us. The forest is not silent. And the 3 knocks are never far away. talk, talk, talk. If this story made you believe that kindness has a language of its own, comment the city you're listening from and rate this story from 0 to 10. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next legend.